Hey, what's up, blue collar business owner? Welcome back to the Blue Collar Prosperity Podcast. I'm your host, Paul Maskill, where we focus on helping guide you to have a prosperous blue collar business. Today, we have with us Jim Cosmas. Jim is the founder of the Blue Collar Wave, where he specializes in transforming home service businesses through expert coaching and consulting. Jim's focus is on refining operational efficiencies and strategic marketing to elevate companies' market presence and, most importantly, their bottom line. Jim is a big believer that revenue feeds your ego, but profit feeds your family. His number one goal is to help serious home service business owners operate more efficiently, maximize every opportunity, and close more sales. So that is Jim Cosmas. Welcome, Jim. Thank you so much for being here. What's going on in Florida today?
Hey, welcome, Paul. Well, day after election, so there's a whole lot going on here in Florida. One of those taboo items, right? We're not supposed to talk about the politics, religion, and a whole bunch of other stuff. But Florida's great. Florida's great. Southwest Florida's fantastic.
Awesome. Yes, we were recording this on November 6th, day after election day. And it's we'll see where 2025 brings us. But jumping into you and your expertise and your background, I know you spend a lot of time in the trades. That's where you play every day. But how did your journey start? How did you get to where you are today?
Paul, I've been in this uh, really in the trade since 1980, longer than probably most of the people that are going to listen to this have been alive. I started off as a technician in the commercial refrigeration, process refrigeration industry, moved into the HVAC industry, very commercial, very large equipment type of stuff, and then eventually moved into the residential services and kind of fell in love with the residential services because for a host of reasons, but really for cash flow reasons, to be honest with you, residential services really do create a whole lot of cash flow versus the commercial side of the world. Moved into business ownership. I've owned businesses, started bootstrap businesses, started them from nothing, and grew them. I've sold a couple of businesses, and we moved into pretty much multi-trade, which HVAC, plumbing, electrical. Had a stint with roofing, doing a little bit of roofing kind of stuff now. A garage door, home remodelers, painting. So if it was home services, I was in it one way or another. I've worked for some of the largest companies in the country, between owning and operating businesses, pretty much every position that exists, literally every position that exists from field service to sales to CSR to dispatch to all of it, management, general management, and ownership.
Awesome.
Presently, yeah, presently in the consulting world.
So you run Blue Collar Wave, and based on your intro and based on you being in every area of the business, big part of what you help owners is becoming efficient in every area. There's always something leaking, and we might not know. We might think we need more leads, but we actually need to get more out of the leads we got. We might think we need to increase our sales, but we actually need to do something else. So let's kind of start at the top of the customer journey with leads. Obviously, throughout COVID, leads were abundant. We didn't have to call everybody back. We didn't have to answer our phone. We didn't have to follow up with there was just enough work for everybody, and everything was great. Nobody really had to, work that hard to go, scrap and claw for every lead. Now going into 2025, a little bit different. A lot of people, homeowners have spent their money on replacements. And a lot of companies are wondering what's next. With your experience, your expertise, you're working with people every day. What's kind of your take on leads? What are companies missing with leads? How do we get more out of, everything that's already coming in the door?
You're right. Companies think they need more leads, and that may be true. They might need some leads. But what I find really is most companies aren't maximizing the leads they already have. You're 100% correct. There are a lot of systems, HVAC systems and plumbing systems and roofing and everything else that were replaced during the COVID years, and then depending on where in the country you are with hurricanes and weather events. So leads are sparse. Leads are sparse. It's maximizing the leads that we already have, but also attracting clients that are kind of soft in the market right now. And what I found is a lot of people have marketing messages that are muddied. There's no unique dominating position or market dominating position that they're taking. So they're creating leads that are just kind of vanilla. They're creating marketing that's kind of vanilla. And they're not really going into people's homes that are looking for something specific. They're trying to be too broad, like, hey, yeah, we service heating and air, or get your tune up today before it gets cold. Nobody cares. So it's really dialing in the marketing, dialing in the messaging. And then once that phone does ring, really being dialing in what happens the moment the customer hears the voice on the other end. What happens at that point? And we work quite a bit on that.
So let's get into that a little bit and get a little bit more clarity on the messaging. We're going into winter, so obviously could be a big time for HVAC depending on where people live, or it could be shoulder season depending on where people live. But give our listeners like one or two examples. It doesn't have to be HVAC. It could be any industry of like what's a vanilla marketing message versus what's an actual marketing message that attracts our ideal client.
So we want to look at marketing messages that address a challenge a customer is having right now. There are two different messages. One is addresses a challenge a client has right now, and the other is addresses a challenge a client might not even know about yet. And I'll give you an example. I'll give you a roofing example. If we address if we go to most roofing companies have messages like uh, yeah, get your roofing inspected before the rainy season, or they might have messages of get your roofing replaced now and save X, right? Type of thing. Versus maybe changing the marketing message a little bit and saying something like, is that stain on your ceiling getting a little bigger? And all of a sudden it really draws in a specific person, a specific target audience that says, wait a minute, they're speaking to me. It's that like they're just actually talking to me. I do have a stain in my ceiling, so it's not so broad. You have other companies, the HVAC companies, plumbers do this all the time, electricians do this all the time, where they try to create a brand. And I'm not against branding, but when we talk about branding and you're doing less than $1 million a year in gross revenues, I have to be honest with you, ladies and gentlemen. If you're Joe's Heating and Air and you're doing six, seven, $800,000 a year, nobody cares about your brand. Nobody. Nobody cares that you're BBB. Nobody cares that you have you're licensed, insured, and bonded. Nobody cares. Those are actually things that are expected. So when we're talking about marketing to people and really getting in front of people to have a specific problem. Let's get in front of people that have a specific problem, or maybe even don't know they have a problem. Heating and air. We're going into winter and saying, versus saying, we have a furnace tune up or a boiler tune up for 79.95, and it's usually 189 vanilla. Everyone does that. What about something like, is your furnace going to last another winter? Is your furnace going to be okay when it's 0 degrees outside? Are you okay with 49 degrees in your house? Right now, all of a sudden it resonates. Well, wait a minute. I don't like that. Like, what are they trying to say? So that's the type of branding and marketing. That's the type of marketing really we should be looking at. This should be truly a market dominating position, something that's specific to you, and then also something that speaks to a very targeted audience.
Love it. Yeah, and I think a lot of times companies think and humans think we've got a scarcity mindset of like, but what about all the other people, right? But we want the people that have the most pressing issue because they're going to call us the soonest versus the people that are, just the going back to what we talked about before, the generalists of like, we were talking before the show that there's between generalists and becoming experts. We want to become the experts in those homes that have the spot on the ceiling because those are the people that we want to call because they want to get that problem fixed before it becomes bigger. So I like to do this a lot. Let's kind of go into customer journey. So, all right, we've got our marketing message figured out. We're getting our ideal clients. Now, how do we make sure we get the most out of all of those leads? Because a lot of times, like we said, we don't actually maximize every lead. So we're getting all the leads. What are some of the things that we should do, shouldn't do that you see, companies out there they're doing when it comes to making sure we're getting the most out of every lead that's coming in the door?
Well, every lead that comes in the door starts usually with a phone call or a form fill or something like that, right? And so there's a journey that customer goes through, and that is, okay, I found you online, or I found something on Facebook, or I found something on Google. However they found you, they have a problem. Maybe they found something they don't know they have a problem, but it was intriguing enough to make a phone call. Now they made a phone call, and what do they hear on the other end? Hello, thank you for calling Jim's Heating and Air. How can I help you? Hold on, click. Really? Like that's what you're going to do? And we hear that all the time. We hear the person on the other end is not warm and friendly. They sound hurried, they sound rushed, it's like they're being bothered. So that's part of the customer journey. It's the immediate interaction with that first interaction with that client happens the moment that phone is picked up. So that person on the other end, the CSR, whomever's handling that phone call, is probably the most important person in that company. So for you CSRs listening to this today, you guys have a really, really big load to carry. Secondly, then, what happens after that interaction? Do we schedule it? Was it easy to schedule? Did the customer get bombarded with 800 questions or not enough questions? We have to make it easy for the customer to schedule, get there when the customer needs to get there, when the customer needs us to be there, find out some specific information, and then move into making sure we're sending in a service scenario, making sure we're sending the right technician. And I'm sure everyone's heard this before, right tech to the right call. I don't understand why that's not being practiced. Everyone practices, well, I have these guys over here, so I'm just going to send these guys. And unfortunately, none of those guys are qualified to handle the call that just came in. So now we get to the service call, and somebody called because something is broken. Technician walks in, blinders on, broke, fix, I fix. Okay, it's fixed. Here's your $149. Thank you very much. Versus saying, you know what? Let's go through the entire system. Let's look at every part of the system. Let's have a complete interaction with the customer, show them that we are truly different. We're not like every other contractor that they've ever dealt with. And then show the customers really things that were found. We could show safety issues and upgrade things and things they didn't even know they had, challenges they didn't even know they had, and bring them to their attention. What happens is we end up maximizing that service call. And we end up taking that service call from 100, 200, $300 to sometimes double and triple. And we're not ripping people off. We're bringing to their attention things that they simply didn't know. They simply didn't know. So better customer service for the customer, better equipment operation, better revenues clearly for the company. And without company revenues, nobody exists. So these are the things that I think are missing in so many companies, so many companies we've been talking about for years and years. It's truly maximizing that service call. I think what happens though, Paul, is people conflate maximizing with high pressure and selling stuff people don't need. That is the furthest from the truth. If we're making stuff up, then you are ripping people off. Then you are. You end up on Channel 2 News. But if you're truly looking at an entire system, and what I mean by an entire system is looking at an HVAC system, don't just look at the condenser, don't just look at the air handler or the coil, or right. We want to look at every part of that system, including the duct system, including the electrical that's feeding it, including the gas system if it's gas, whatever, and make a list of things that we find that really should be addressed, that should be concerns or even upgrades. Indoor air quality. I can't believe we even talk about that still, you know that only I think it's the recent studies show 2% of HVAC contractors even talk about IAQ, indoor air quality, after all of these years.
Yeah, so
It really is. It's that's the types of things that we talk about maximizing, and unfortunately, so many people say, "I just need more leads." You need to really do better with the leads that you have.
Yeah, so let's get into that even a little bit further, especially on the sales process. I totally agree with the CSRs, right? Like that's their first experience, that's the customer's first interaction. CSR is the first salesperson in the company. They got to sell the company to the person calling to be like, cool, I will book, or you know what, let me call around. Same thing goes when you mentioned form fills. We've all filled out forms on websites and they just go into this black hole. We never hear anything. Don't get an email confirmation. Don't get a text confirmation. Don't get a phone call. And then it's if we don't get anything in 10 or 15 minutes, it's on to the next one. So, but going into that sales process, I mean, I agree 100% because we're going into the house as the expert. And I always equate it to anybody that'll listen is it's just like going to the doctor's office, right? Like we're going to go to the doctor's office and say my knee hurts. But that doctor's still going to check your pulse. They're still going to check your blood pressure. They're going to check all these things because it's their responsibility as the expert to catch those things if there is an issue. If they realize, holy cow, you have high blood pressure, we need to treat that as well. Because what happens in our world, in the trades and in the doctor's world, if they don't check that and that person goes and have a heart attack, be like, did you just see a doctor yesterday? Yeah,
Right.
but they didn't check anything. And the same thing is in the trades. If someone calls you and says, my thermostat's not working, I want it replaced, and all we go and replace that thermostat, that's all we do. We don't check anything else. And that person's heat goes out tomorrow and it's 49 degrees in the house. Who are they going to be mad at? They're going to be mad at the HVAC company and technician for not looking at everything else and realizing, oh, that's a 20-year-old system. No wonder it died. They rather have that brought to their attention and decline it and say, at least I know about it versus, well, I don't want to tell them anything because I don't want to be salesy and I'm just a technician to fix something and I just took an order and fixed it. So we don't have to go into an entire sales process, but what are the most common things that you see companies not doing when it comes to the in-home sales process, especially from the service side?
Training, training. Also, mindset shift. Technicians, a lot of technicians, really most technicians, like they didn't get into the industry to sell. At least that's what they say. I don't want to be a salesperson. I don't want to sell. That's because sales has such a negative connotation because we've all been exposed to the sleazy salespeople, right? But I think companies really fail to make sure that the technicians understand that they are selling. Even if they don't think they are selling, they're selling. They're selling that repair. Even if they say, you know what, I don't want to do any upgrades, I don't want to do any of that stuff, you still have to sell the repair that you went there to make, that contactor, right? Or that condenser fan motor, or that angle stop on a plumbing fixture. You still have to sell that. There still has to be somebody has to convince somebody of something in order for that to happen. So you are selling. So I think they're what a lot of companies do is they fail to have that paradigm shift with their field staff to get them to understand you are selling. And let's make that perfectly clear. We are in a sales position. Now, with that being said, there has to be an ethical sales process that happens throughout a service call, throughout a sales call, right? There has to be an ethical sales process. We can't wing it. And unfortunately, what happens is we see that often is service guys go out there, best intention, really good techs, man, that really, really good techs, but they're winging it because they haven't been trained.
So when it comes to training, what do you see as kind of best practices? Obviously, you help companies with this, but is it weekly training? Is it role playing? Is it ride-alongs? Is it we do something every morning? Obviously, every company's different, every owner is different, every management style is different, but what have you seen that, kind of works the best in most cases?
That's an easy one. Yes,
Yes, all of it.
all of it. None of it is bad, and all of it is excellent. The more you do, the better. If your staff really sees you as a training organization, as an organization that's trying to elevate their skill set, not only their technical skill set, but also their ability to speak, communicate, and sell, um, that to me is just it's priceless. So training starts really from the hiring process and setting an expectation of training at that hiring process. People need to know that when they're hired and they come on, they're coming on to a training organization, an organization that trains continuously. So yes, on training on a weekly basis. Yes, on training on a daily basis. Yes, on a morning huddle. Yes, on a call by call. Yes, on all of those things. But if you had to do one, if you're not large enough to say, you know what, I don't have 15 field guys, right? I can't do that. If you had to do one, just every single week, at least once a week, 1 hour, sit down and go through a sales process training. If you have one, great. If you don't have one, seek out a consultant, a coach, seek out me, Blue Collar Way. That's what we do. That's what we do. We help you implement a sales training process. That's not sleazy, cheesy, pull the rug under for people. That's not a sales process. So one thing I would say is certainly do a sales training every single week. The other thing though that happens though in these trainings, and I see this often, and I know you've seen it, Paul, you've experienced it, and that is we have a meeting once a week and it's not clear what's happening in that meeting. Is it training? Okay, we do 15 minutes of training, then we do 15 minutes of, oh, we have new insurance coming in, then we do 15 minutes of it's a bitch session, right? Oh, you did this wrong, you did that wrong. And it's just muddied. It's just muddied. If you're going to do a training session, do a training session and nothing else in between it.
Yeah, and I think that's the huge difference. What's the difference between a meeting and training is when we're training, we're practicing, we're getting better. Meeting is, like you said, we're giving you updates on the company. This is where we're going. This is what happened. This is what we got, all that kind of stuff. And really having those two different times, different days, so that way people, when they show up to training, it's like, all right, that's exactly what we're going to do. So one last thing that I want to kind of dive into, because I've seen this a lot in a lot of companies, is when it comes to pricing. So when most trades companies start, it's started by a technician who used to work at a company and believes I can do this better, cheaper, faster, different,
Yep.
whatever it is. And they go and set their price. And they set their price basically being like, well, when I worked at Joe's Heating and Air, they charge this. I don't have to charge that much. It's just me. But we never really actually have a formula for pricing. And then when we do start to bring on people, we don't change our pricing, even though we have to pay people to do it. And then what really happens is when we start to adjust our pricing, a lot of times our technicians are like, Jim, there's no way we can charge $500 to put up a ceiling fan, or there is no way anyone's going to, like, going back to that mindset. There's just a lot of, pushback and disbelief and all that. What do you tell people when you're working with people of like, we got to change our pricing and this is what it's got to be? How does that go? How do we get them on board? Give us the ins and outs of that.
You nailed it. Most people that get into the home services industry, love them all. I was one of them, but we didn't have a business background. We just didn't have it. I didn't have it when I first got into business. I was just a good tech, right? I could fix stuff, and I could fix it better than my idiot boss could before I got into business, right? And I could do it cheaper than they could. And that's unfortunately that's the mindset. And it's not because you're a bad person. It's just because you don't know what you don't know. And then all of a sudden you realize, insurance and I have gas and all these other things. So there are costs associated with this. We need to be very, very clear on financials training for business owners and business managers. They need to understand how to look at their financials. They don't need to be CPAs. They don't need to be like at the level that you are, Paul, but they do need to have a complete and thorough understanding of their financials and what they mean. So they can look at just the P&L and say, you know what? There are some things on here that I need to speak to somebody about. So first thing. Second is price lives in here for most contractors. It's in their mind. It's not in your customer's mind. They don't know the difference. And I know what we're going to hear. Yeah, yeah, but they got on the internet and they see a contactor for $8 and you're charging $350. Yep, that's true. That's true. But price objections live mostly in the mind of the contractors and the technicians. Because what happens is they tend to sell from their own wallet and they tend to feel that, man, I wouldn't pay for this much for this. Not a chance I would pay $387 for this contactor. And the reason is because they know what it costs. They know what it takes. And they place no value in their own what they can do all the years. And they exchange time for money. They say, well, you know what? What's going to take me 15 minutes. How can I charge $387? So what I tell people all the time is you have to move away from that mindset. And I tell them this, you are not your customer. Give them exactly what they need, give them exactly what you found and exactly what it costs to do that. Build enough value so the value far exceeds the dollars, far exceeds that. And we do that. There's a host of ways of doing that. And at that point, get the right price and leave it to the customer to say yes or no. And if they say no, there are methods to overcome those things too. But I'm with you, man. It's unfortunate that contractors are afraid to raise their prices, and that's one of the strategies that I teach heavily is price increases. Um, there's another reason why contractors are afraid to raise their prices, though, real quick, and that is they think the customer will know. Well, last year you were getting this for a contactor. This year you're getting that. What gives? Nobody knows that. It's not like you go to a coffee shop every day and the coffee was $3.87 and tomorrow's $4.25. You notice it, right? You don't notice what we do in the services. You just don't. You just don't. So get out of your own head on the pricing and
Love
truly
it.
understand your financials.
Yeah, and I think it really does come down to that because once you understand what you need to charge and why you need to charge it, then it's justifiable and head like, well, if we want to stay in business, have the best techs, have the best systems and processes, best vehicles, all the things that we're promising, then this is what we have to charge in order to deliver on all that. So we've talked about a lot of stuff, Jim. We've talked about leads, we've talked about marketing and messaging and sales and pricing and training and all that. But as we start to wrap up, I want you to give our listeners one thing they can do, one action item, so they can start to move their business a little bit forward. So, what is one thing they could do within the next 24 hours to move their business forward, even just 1%?
Raise your prices by 5%. No matter what you're charging now, raise your prices by 5% across the board. Across the board. If you raise your prices by 5%, how many customers do you think you'll lose as a result of it? I'm going to go with a nice big round number, but even if you lost 10% of your clientele base, it's still going to equate to probably a 35% increase in your bottom line revenue. What happens, bottom line profits? What happens when you increase your prices 5%? Where does that 5% go?
Straight to the bottom line.
Straight to the bottom. Straight to the bottom. There are no additional costs associated. The easiest thing to do, 5% across the board. But now you have to have a conversation with your service people, right? We have to have a conversation with our CSR. We have to make sure everyone's bought in. But once that's done, raise your prices 5%, the easiest thing to do.
Love it. Jim Cosmas, thanks again for coming on the show, sharing your journey and providing a ton of actionable advice, insight, and wisdom for all the blue collar business owners out there as we continue our journey to prosperity. Before we sign off, Jim, though, where can our listeners go to keep in touch with you and learn more about what you can do for them?
Easiest place to go, a whole lot of free resources, free training, and there's a simulator at thebluecollarwave.com. It's thebluecollarwave.com. There's a simulator that could show you exactly what will happen if you make tiny little incremental changes in your business. Real easy to do. Thebluecollarwave.com.
Awesome. There you guys have it. Go to thebluecollarwave.com. Check it out. Ton of free resources there. Jim, thanks again for coming on the show today. Really appreciate your time.
Awesome being here, Paul. I appreciate you.
And before we go, as you know, there are a lot of moving parts when it comes to creating consistent positive cash flow. However, the journey starts with making sure you are priced right so you can have a growing and more profitable business. I've created a super easy to use pricing calculator for everyone in the trades. You will no longer have to guess what you should charge. You'll no longer have to call around your competition and see what they charge. This calculator is easy to use and will provide you confidence and clarity that you're actually priced right. It also comes with a step-by-step PDF guide and a video walkthrough. So head on over to thebluecollaradvisors.com/price. thebluecollaradvisors.com/price to download it today and so you can start implementing it tomorrow. Until next time, remember, what got you here won't get you there. If you are ready for different results, it's time to start doing things differently.